This is fucking Nick Gage, man. I'm the leader of the MDK gang, Eastern Bloc. Shout out to Nate Hatred, RIP, Hate Club. If you ain't listening to Wrestling Cheers, I'm gonna send someone to your fucking house. They're gonna murder your fucking family right in front of you. So I bet you better be listening to Wrestling Cheers. It's the fucking God.
Taking your way in the world today takes everything you got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You want to go where you can see that troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name.
And welcome back to Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially, well, when it's just me. This is Wrestling Cheers. We like to talk about things going on in Northeast Ohio independent wrestling scene. We preview shows, we review shows, and sometimes we even have interviews along the way. This is a shot of Wrestling Cheers. I'm your host, Justin Summers, and Wrestling Cheers is brought to you by the Trending Topics Network and Midwest Territory. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to this fine podcast, whether it be Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, or Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose, desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. And we have the merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. Like I said, this is a shot of Wrestling Cheers. So I'm just now starting to record, so I don't know necessarily how long this episode's going to be, but as you're listening, you can see how long it is, and it's a short one. I had some guests planned for this week. Unfortunately, scheduling kind of came in between us, and we weren't able to schedule anything for this week as I had previously wanted, and I really didn't have a backup plan. You know, ever since COVID happened, I've been, popping on episodes left and right, and it was kind of easier to do some of those episodes because it was, hey, I knew I didn't have anything to cover. But with this year and a lot of AIW shows popping up, and some we're going to briefly talk about today, I've had to kind of go back to what I used to do, which is fun. I have no issue with that, but it's getting interviews and episodes scheduled. A little small peek behind the curtain too. There is a couple episode concepts that I have talked about with people, but I haven't fully executed, and I wasn't really in the mood of pulling the trigger on something like that right now, and it was hard to find somebody at the last minute. Like, as of right now, it is literally Wednesday evening, past 11 o'clock. This will come out sometime probably after midnight. It'll say midnight, but it'll come out sometime shortly after. So the idea that I was thinking for this episode, and unfortunately it's what AIW did this week, we're going to talk about some of the shows coming up with AIW. Now, AIW has 6 shows announced between now in the middle of September. 4 of these shows are going to get previews and reviews here on the podcast. And those are kind of the main 4 we're going to talk about. I know there's also, the 2 other shows that we're not going to talk about, but that just, it is what it is. I think those 2 other shows that I'll mention after I mention the first 4, it's just, I don't think they're going to be shows that definitely won't get previews. And there's multiple reasons why they won't get reviews. So let's talk about the 4 that are getting a preview and a review. First off, we have the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tag Team Tournament, which is Friday, July 30th. Then we have A Touch of Evil on August 27th. The next day after that, we have Wrestle Rager 5 Fight to Survive on August 28th. And then September 10th, Sunny Days. So the 2 that won't be getting a preview or review, Nightmare on North Elm Street, which is Saturday, July 31st, and AIW at the North Canton Main Street Festival. So we learned on the AIW podcast this week that the Nightmare on North Elm Street, it's a paid show for AIW. It's not necessarily a regular type of show. So with the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tag Team Tournament, or the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tournament the day before, that'll be the big thing, and that'll be Actually, the preview will be next week's episode. Myself, Charlie Butters, and Jay Gold, we were here for all of Go for Broke. And hey, we're going to preview this final ending to Go for Broke with the tournament. So with this show being the next day, and as of right now, we only have one match announced, I don't expect it to be a regular type of show. And then when it comes to the North Canton show on August 14th, unfortunately, I have a wedding that day. And I'm choosing the wedding over AIW for very good reason. At the end of October 2014 / the beginning of November 2014, I ended a almost 6-year relationship with an ex, and I had no place to live. At that time, I kind of had a lot of my stuff at my mom's house, but even she was kind of in the middle of moving, so I had like a couple months to figure stuff out. But at the beginning of 2015, a friend of mine helped me out and allowed me to move into his house that he was living at in Akron with his, at the time, girlfriend. And at the end of that year, 2015, he invited me to move with him to a house in Ravenna. And at this point, he wasn't with that girlfriend anymore. So it's going to be me and him. He was buying the house and he was allowing me to rent a room for a while. I was there for 2 years and I kind of owe him a lot. So I'm choosing his wedding over AIW, and actually my fiance kind of asked me about that. She's like, wow, I can't believe you're doing that. And, you know, it comes down to someone who hooked me up for 3 years, place to live, was always willing to work with me if I couldn't pay rent, because that first year I was really bad at it because of everything going on in my life and trying to adjust. And I was over the road. It gets into a whole big story, but I unfortunately won't be able to make this free AIW show on top of it, but you know, it is what it is. But going back to the 4 shows, the Chandler Biggins Memorial Tournament, Touch of Evil, Wrestle Rager 5, Sunny Days, those will get previews, reviews. I got a couple interviews lined up. The one that was supposed to be this week might be happening in a couple weeks. And I don't know exactly how we'll do with 2 shows right after each other of A Touch of Evil and Wrestle Rager 5, how the previews will work. And then actually with the scheduling, you know, with the Sunny Day show, there's going to be a lot of episodes within a short amount of time. And also a thing that's got to be mentioned, the thing that not many people talked about, like the end of August, if you are a Northeast Ohio independent wrestling fan, is potentially a 3-day wrestling weekend for you. We got A Touch of Evil. I haven't mentioned yet, with Danhausen on Friday, August 22nd, 7th. And then on the 28th, Wrestle Rager 5. And then the 29th, as is tradition, and I'm happy it still works out this way, is the Old Wrestling Extravaganza that I plan on going to. I have an interview penciled in for that day. I don't know how it's going to work, and I have to talk to somebody else about maybe potentially a second interview that day or a backup interview. We'll see how things go, but that's kind of my plan for at least that day. So that weekend is very much slammed, very much packed. So it's going to be really exciting to see what we have going forward with AIW. 6 shows coming up, 4 shows getting previews and reviews. And the end of August, beginning of September, I'm planning on a lot of episodes. So basically, we got a lot of stuff coming up, and I hope you're as excited for it as I am. I'm somewhat thankful for AIW keeping me busy right now and keeping my wallet very active at the same time. You know, we got a lot of great stuff going on in pro wrestling right now. Like I said, this is Wednesday night, and we just had Nick Gage come out on AEW television. That was pretty cool to see. I was on my way home from work. Unfortunately, I wasn't watching it live, but my phone kind of blew up with notifications, so I got the gist of it, and pretty damn cool. It's great to see all those great things happen, and it's great to see a lot of shows coming up for AIW. So like I said, that's going to keep us pretty busy into September. And yeah, that's pretty much the episode. As always, you can find myself at jsummers330 on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, much like you can find this show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Facebook.com/WrestlingCheers, Twitter.com/WrestlingCheers, and Instagram.com/WrestlingCheers. Email, if you so choose or desire, WrestlingCheers@gmail.com. And we have the merch store over at whatamaneuver.net. Like I said earlier in this show, Please rate, review, and subscribe your ever listen to this fine podcast, whether it be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music, and Podbean, WrestlingCheers.podbean.com, and all of that is in the link tree in the notes of the episode. Check out our other friends on the Trending Topics Network, such as All Beer Inside, Eurovision Showcase, Spanish Announce Table, and Wrestling with Altitude. Check out our other podcast friends, such as Let the Hate Flow Through You, Pod Van Dam, Super Fantastic Podcast, It's Evolution Baby, The IndieCast, Sobros Network, Biff Radio, Off the Hop Rope, and Game Marks podcasts that are a part of the major podcast network, Powerbomb Jitsu, The Spotlight Series, Fully Posable, Doing the Favor, Positively Pro Wrestling, IWTV Guide, At Odds with Wrestling, Best in the World Podcast, Marks with Mikes, This Ends at Prom, and Porch Talk. Check out our other non-podcast friends such as Thrift Store Jobber, The Savage Stash, The Mystery Men, Redline Radio, Mouse's Wrestling Adventures, VHS Party Tonight on Instagram, Happy Hour with Steve Guy, The Co-Host Wrestling Show, Good Company, Heart of Gold, Toy Hio Toy Show, Time Capsules Toys, Stay Tough, Smokin' Jay's Barbecue, Wrestle Void, Midwest Territory, Southern Underground Pro, and the official graphic designer of Wrestling Cheers, Moy Boy Designs. That will do it for us here on Wrestling Cheers, where everybody knows your name, especially when your name is Jeff Kalb. Because unfortunately, this past week we did lose another member of the AIW extended family. Much like a lot of us here on Wrestling Cheers, Jeff Kalb was a very dedicated AIW fan, and we're all sad to see him go. This came very suddenly, and when we all woke up to the news, we were blindsided. I know at the Hello Cleveland show, Jeff and I did sit next to each other, and we talked about, obviously, the show, but at the same time, the Browns were drafting, and he was watching the draft on his phone, and we were talking about all that process. There is a GoFundMe that I will be putting in the show notes, and if you can give any amount of money, please do so. We are planning on having a tailgate in his memory before the Elm Street show, and his calling hours will be the next day on August 1st. If you don't already know the information on that, feel free to reach out to me or anybody else in the know. And his mother has requested we wear wrestling shirts, which won't be a hard thing for me. This is something we've had to do a lot lately, or just feels that way. Last year around this time, we lost Tom Troll. Earlier this year, we lost Shannon from Smart Mark Video. And now Jeff. You are a beloved member of this community, and you will be missed. Tell Biggins we all said hi. Rest in peace, bud, and farewell.
It's the Wrestling Cheers. Get up on your feet, brightening your day in the middle of the week. And you gotta love the show. Yeah, you know it holds a title for the best podcast talking wrestling in Ohio. Finishing a cold one, take a load off. We ain't all about the prohibition like Josh, so we cheers. And then we sit back. Other shows are in the trash, kinda like they Nick Stapp. Like the name is Matt Justice, wearing all the gold. Wrestling Cheers is coming to a close. The #1 podcast going in the game. And one day everybody's gonna know the name. It's the Wrestling Cheers. This is Platinum Max, signing off. Ohio, good night. The world, good night. We love you. We'll see you next week.